Hello, everyone, and welcome. For those of you who were here yesterday, welcome back to the conclusion of our RCM birthday celebration. And to those who are just joining today, welcome. If you could very quickly just put in the chat for me to make sure that you can see and hear me, if you'll do that for me. And so yesterday, what happened yesterday is we almost finished our RCM birthday celebration. And I showed you a copy of my book that's called Reliability-Centered Maintenance. It was written by Stanley Nolan and 𝗷𝗶𝗃𝗲. And these are the two authors of the first book on reliability-centered maintenance. And you can see here the reason for the celebration, well, yesterday anyway, is that we're celebrating the 42nd birthday. And so that was yesterday, December 29th, 1978. Now the reason, hi Kamal, thank you, you can hear me and see me. Hi Stephen, thank you. Okay, so yesterday, what happened is I lost my internet connection, and okay, so that's crummy. But let's use it to highlight some principles of reliability. I showed you yesterday, and many of you have seen the 6 different failure patterns, right? The moral of the story with the failure patterns is that reliability-centered maintenance principles were born out of necessity, because in the commercial airline industry, way back in the 1960s, they thought equipment failure for the most part behaved like this, where the x-axis is age and the y-axis is the conditional probability of failure. So basically what they believed is that failure occurred because things got old. So if they knew the age at which things would fail, as long as they did a scheduled replacement or a scheduled overhaul, well, then they could prevent failure modes and therefore prevent failure. Well, they figured out pretty fast as new aircraft came onto the scene with complex equipment like electronics, hydraulics, electronics, pneumatics, and pressurized cabins, that actually wasn't the case. And they proved that most failures occur randomly. And so they figured they needed a new way of doing business to come up with proactive maintenance tasks, and that's how RCM was born. Now, what happened yesterday when my internet cut out and we couldn't finish our celebration is I fell prey to failure pattern E, which is random failure, right? So here we go, let me get that straight. Where the x-axis is age and the y-axis is the conditional probability of failure. So what this curve is telling us is that if something has the same chance of failing today as it does next week, as it does next year, as it does next in the next several years. And that's true of my internet connection, right? I mean, it was completely random what happened. I don't know what happened. I know that it wasn't just it wasn't just mine, because there was an outage in the surrounding area. Now, it only lasted about 10 or 15 minutes, but it interrupted our live stream. So in the context of reliability-centered maintenance, I would say that has operational consequences, right? It could potentially reflect badly on me. I would say it had operational consequences. Now, it caused me to have to schedule another day, and if you plan to come back, that's your time also, which is really valuable. So, and see, my mentor John Mowbray taught me that the essence of reliability-centered maintenance is managing the consequences of failure. So if the consequences of failure are so unacceptable, then we have to manage them. We can do it with a proactive maintenance task, or like in the case of a lot of complex equipment, we have redundancy built in, right? Like we have backup equipment. Now, I didn't have a backup internet connection, so I suffered the consequences of the failure, and so did my viewers. But we're back here today, so I guess that's how I managed it, is I managed it by scheduling a day 2. So thank you and welcome everyone. So we'll just finish a super quick recap of what we did yesterday, and then we will finish. So let me just share my screen. Oh, that's not what I want to do. Hold on, I'll get it right. There we go. Okay. So would you let me know in the chat if you can see my screen? I should be sharing, but I just want to make sure. Okay, so let's get to, give me 1 second. Okay, there we go. Okay, so yesterday what we discussed is that reliability-centered maintenance is a philosophy, that it is not a maintenance program, it's not a software application, it is a philosophy that you can use to come up with your own failure management strategies for your equipment. And what one of the things that we talked about is, why isn't reliability-centered maintenance used more widely? You know, we're celebrating the 42nd birthday of it, but I still come across people who maybe are just hearing about RCM, and maybe that they've heard about it, but maybe they don't quite understand the principles as they were originally intended to be implemented. And this is not their fault. One of the reasons, I think, is because RCM has been done poorly at times over the years, and so sometimes RCM gets a bad rap. Put in the chat if you've heard like RCM takes too long, you don't get the results you need, etc. Which all that is not true. I can promise you that. But the other reason is because of this. It's that reliability-centered maintenance takes time. It takes time, it takes commitment, and it takes resources. Now, can you do it cost effectively and efficiently? Yes, absolutely. But it isn't free. Just like anything, right? We know the laws of thermodynamics, there is no free lunch. If you want a return, then you have to make an investment. And reliability-centered maintenance is one of the best investments you can make for your equipment. Something else we talked about is that you don't have to do reliability-centered maintenance on all of your equipment. You can just do reliability-centered maintenance on select pieces of equipment. In fact, I mean, we all live in the real world, right? So if we're going to get real and we're going to get serious, I'm not going to stand here and tell you you have to do RCM on all of your equipment, because you don't have the time and you don't have the resources to do it on everything. And we don't necessarily have to do RCM on everything to get benefit. Start with what's causing you the most pain. Start with the equipment that is most critical to you. Begin there and start off small. Don't go spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars starting an RCM program. Start small with a couple of pilot projects so you can understand the technology, you understand what it takes, and what you can get in return for your efforts. So the other reason why I believe it is not as widely used as it should be is because it takes time, right? And so, but the problem is that when we don't do reliability-centered maintenance, and when we don't take care of our reliability the way we need to, we get into this do loop that you see here, right? Where we think, oh, well, we've got no time for proactive maintenance, right? So never mind, we don't have time to stop and figure out what proactive maintenance we should be doing. A lot of organizations I hear, they don't have time to stop and do it. So what happens is then a machine fails, they scramble to fix it, then they're finally back up and running, and now they got to catch up with production. And so now they're back in the boat where they don't have any time to figure out what maintenance to do or even to do it. So it's like, see how we're in this continuous loop, right? And where we end up is obviously production losses or missed missions, right? Maybe you're out there, maybe your industry is the military. That's where I got all of my beginning experience with RCM was in the military. So it wasn't necessarily about lost production or lost dollars, but it was about missed missions or missed training missions. That is a very big deal in the military. Another thing is, if you are in a manufacturing environment, you can have high scrap costs, right? If your machines are not doing what you need, then you produce stuff that you cannot sell, and now you've got a lot of waste there. But another thing, it isn't necessarily a physical thing that you can put on a balance sheet, but we end up with disjointed teams and high turnover, right? So we've got valuable staff members. They've got information in their head. They have an understanding about our organization, but the culture, right? We hear a lot about a reliability culture. We're all in this reactive mode. Everyone's running around. We're not taking care of reliability the way that we need. So then good people leave our organization and they take the information that's in their brains with them. So that's another big consequence of disjointed teams. Now, when we take care of reliability the way we need to, when we have a good philosophy, which reliability-centered maintenance is part of that effective philosophy, then we get what we need from our equipment. And in a nutshell, that's what reliability is, right? If our compressor is running, right, and it does not chronically fail, if you ask somebody on the floor, hey, what do you think of that compressor? They'd probably say, you know what, it's pretty reliable. I mean, that's what reliability is. That's a very simple view of it. But I think it's very important to have a simple view of reliability, because then we can get into the weeds and get into the nuts and bolts of what we have to do. But that's what reliability is. It's getting what we need from our equipment. So how do we do it? Well, reliability-centered maintenance is one effective way. It's one piece of the puzzle. It's not the answer for everything, but it's an important piece of the puzzle. Now, it consists of 7 steps that you can see here. Let's see, here we go. 7 steps that you can see here. Oh, let me get my mouse right. I'm using 2 screens, and sometimes it gives me fits. There we go. You can see the 7 steps here, right? But if I were to tell you what RCM is in a nutshell, number 1, we use it to identify what we need from our equipment. In other words, we get very specific about the reliability that we need. And number 2, it helps us figure out what we have to do to get it. That's reliability-centered maintenance. Now, why don't more organizations use it? Another reason is because it takes time. It takes investment. It takes resources. So a lot of people, when they don't understand it, they think of RCM, they think of proactive maintenance as a cost center and not a profit center. But here's how I'd like to boil it down. Just think of ourselves as human beings, right? And the way that we eat. If we go through McDonald's every day for lunch or dinner because it's fast, because it's easy, and because it takes little effort on our part, if we eat a Big Mac today and a large fry and a Coke, it's not a big deal. But if we do that every day for lunch, maybe even after a week, it's not even a big deal. But as the months go by and as the years pile on, that's going to be very bad for our health, very bad for our weight, very bad for our psyche. If, now you're trying to put on your pants and they're too tight. I mean, nobody likes that feeling. That's just an ugly feeling. Then we feel badly about ourselves, and it's like everything just starts to spiral. It's the same thing with reliability, right? So taking a salad takes longer to prepare. You have to wash the lettuce and peel the carrots and wash them. Same thing with the cucumbers and the celery. And I like to put apples in my salad. Maybe some fresh herbs, some fresh parsley. You've got to wash all of that. It takes longer. In the short term, it's not as satisfying very often, to plop down in front of the couch watching TV, eating the Big Mac. But in the long term, there's a big payoff. Because our health is better, we feel better, we look better. But it takes longer than a week, and reliability is the same way. If we eat the Big Macs, it's easy, it's delicious, but long term it causes us problems. We get into this do loop, right? And then we're in reactive mode, running from fire to fire. But when we eat the salad, When we do RCM, we figure out the maintenance we should be doing and we do it, then our machines run, production runs smoothly, we have a lot less stress, and we have a reliable organization. Okay, this is where we left off yesterday, and I want to make a few points. And hello, Mark from Cypress, Texas. Hello, Hudson. Thank you for joining today. If you have any questions, please do put it in the chat, and I'll answer it as we go. And if you feel like it, tell me where you're tuning in from today. We'll see how many different places we have that we're all coming together from. Okay. So to debunk a few misconceptions, one of the questions yesterday is, what is the difference between FMEA, or failure modes and effects analysis, and RCM? Which one should I do? Here's the thing. RCM is one-stop shopping for a lot of things. Steps 1 through 4, functions, functional failures, failure modes, and failure effects, make up the FMEA. So if you're doing RCM correctly, then the requirement for an FMEA is largely satisfied. When we do step 5 in the RCM process, that's failure consequences, where we assess the consequences of each failure mode. Well, that makes up now steps 1 through 5 make up our FMECA, our failure modes, effects, and criticality analysis. And then within, embodied in step 6, when we figure out what proactive maintenance we should do, that included in that is condition-based maintenance. So I also hear, should I do RCM or should I do CBM? Well, you see, when you do RCM correctly, you're already considering condition-based maintenance. So it's all wrapped up in it. Now, something else that we talked about yesterday is I likened reliability-centered maintenance to a funnel. And I'd asked the question, have you ever tried to replenish your oil reservoir, or if you change your own oil, when you service the reservoir with oil, have you ever tried to do it without a funnel? I had to pull over one time and add oil into my 2014 Subaru, and I didn't have a funnel, and it was messy, right? Well, reliability-centered maintenance makes it easy for you to come up with a proactive maintenance that's technically the right thing to do and that is worth doing. And the gist of it is, we take each failure mode, each cause of failure, because we manage physical assets at the failure mode level, so we want to analyze one at a time. We put each failure mode in the funnel, and what comes out is the decision as to how we're going to manage that mode, whether it's proactive maintenance or some sort of a default strategy like augment an operating procedure, or maybe we have a failure finding task for a protective device, like we're going to blow smoke at the smoke detector every year to make sure that it is working. Okay, so this is an easy way to remember what reliability-centered maintenance is all about. I just think of it as like a funnel. Okay, I'm going to pause and just have a look in the chat. Oh, thank you, Rich. Rich is watching us from Pennsylvania. You're welcome, Rich. It's my pleasure to come live, and I'll tell you, reliability-centered maintenance is the technical love of my life, and it is because it's just no joke. We talked about yesterday, the 2 words of the day were philosophy and transformation, and when you do RCM correctly, it can quite literally transform an organization. I've seen it firsthand, and I actually have an example to show you, because the way that I started doing reliability-centered maintenance is, I shared yesterday, is that I was a civilian employee with the Naval Air Systems Command, and one day in August 1997, my supervisor, Fred, called me into his office, and he said we were tasked to do reliability-centered maintenance because we needed to reduce our maintenance costs because we were spending way too much money on maintenance. So our reliability was okay, but we were spending way too much money on maintenance. So we started doing reliability-centered maintenance on our mobile support equipment. And our goal was to reduce maintenance. Now, can RCM reduce maintenance? Yes, it can, if you are already doing way too much maintenance, or you're doing maintenance that you don't need to do or that you shouldn't do, okay? So if you are working in an environment where you're doing very little proactive maintenance, but you've got chronic failure, well, you may drastically increase how much maintenance you do, but then you may decrease your unplanned failures, and you will decrease all that other stuff like lost production costs and stuff. So it really depends on what your goal is and what your current circumstances are. Now, when I was a Navy employee, these are the slides I'm about to show you. These are slides that I shared on a conference platform, and I'm totally dating myself, but this is a long time ago. This is a few years into when we started. So this is in the early 2000s, but I will tell you that I'm super proud, and it really does excite me to say that this RCM program is still going strong today. So it is a testament to how effective reliability-centered maintenance can be when it's done correctly. So I started that program in 1997, and it's still going strong. So that's 24 years. 24 years later, it's still going. Okay, so let me share this with you. And first, let me have a look in the chat. Vijaya or Viaja, hello from Dubai. Wow, Francis is joining us from Lusaka, Zambia, and Gavin is joining us from London. Isn't this incredible? I mean, you know, COVID is like it's like a big Debbie Downer. I personally miss people. I love being at conferences and meeting people and talking to people. So I really miss that, but you know, on the flip side, we have the internet, and what a powerful tool it is that, you know, today I can be sharing my thoughts with people from all over the world. So, and thank you for tuning in. My mentor, John Mowbray, taught me that time is our most valuable asset as human beings, and you've chosen to share some of your time with me today, and I'm sincerely grateful for that. Oh my gosh, Shanawaj is joining us from Bangladesh. That's insane. Thank you so much for that. Okay, Hector asks, is it possible to chance a random failure to a predictable one? Okay, oh my gosh, Winifred is joining us from Ghana. Hello, Winifred from Ghana. That's incredible. All right, back to Hector's question. Hector, I think you may be asking this, that if you've got a failure mode that is random, in other words, you can't, it has the same chance of failing today as it does next month. Can we do predictive maintenance on it? And the answer is very likely yes. Because just because something fails randomly doesn't mean we can't manage it. Because many failure modes give us a warning that failure is in the process of occurring, right? Like vibration or results of an oil analysis, which that may not necessarily be random, but or like, how about an internal rotating component in an engine? Let's assume for a moment that it does fail randomly, but what happens when an internal component is in the process of failing? It starts to make metal, right? So we could do oil analysis to check for metal contamination. Maybe we have a protective device installed, like a chip detector system. Lights, it will illuminate a light on the control panel to let us know that if we don't act soon, failure will occur. So the answer to that question is absolutely yes. Just because a failure is random doesn't necessarily mean you can't manage it. So in the example that I just gave, just because it's random, you're likely to be able to apply condition-based maintenance. And that's one of the strengths of CBM. Now, if you've got an electronic, right, where, you get like in a light bulb, you get a flicker before the light bulb fails. Well, that could be anywhere from a minute or two. It might flicker for a while, or it could just be like a millisecond and then it's gone. In that case, we don't have enough time to take action, so CBM wouldn't be appropriate, right? So if consequences of failure are that severe, then we would have to think of a different way to manage it. Like, for example, we could have a backup system, right? Okay, so the answer to that question is yes. So now let me get back to this. So we started our RCM program on mobile support equipment, like you see, mobile tow tractors and air conditioning units, mobile electric power plants, etc. And let me show you some of the results. So here you see, this is scheduled maintenance man hours. So this is scheduled maintenance before and after RCM. So the yellow is before RCM, and the blue is after RCM. These are scheduled maintenance man hours. Now, we had an average reduction of maintenance man hours by 74%. Now, that is because we drastically reduced the amount of maintenance that we were doing. But this is an important caveat. We were doing way too much maintenance to begin with, so we had a big opportunity to reduce it. Now, along with that, we also reduced our consumable usage, right? Less oil, less rags, less filters, etc. So there was a big opportunity to make reductions there. Likewise, with hazmat disposal, we were disposing of fewer used filters and less used lubrication, etc. But this is the one I really want to highlight. And so you see here 1998 versus the year 2000, and this is scheduled and unscheduled maintenance man hours. So the point I want to make here is that while we drastically reduced scheduled maintenance, the unscheduled maintenance man hours were reduced. With the yellow I totally messed that up. The yellow is before RCM and the blue is after RCM. So the thing to highlight here is you can see that our scheduled maintenance man hours went down, but the unscheduled maintenance man hours just went down a little bit. And the point to be made here is that we didn't harm our reliability. We didn't have all sorts of chronic failure occurring because we reduced the maintenance. So really that was confirmation that we did it right? That we chose properly how to manage all of those different failure modes that we had analyzed. So that's just one quick case study, one that is near and dear to my heart because it's where I first started my RCM career and where I started to learn my craft. Okay, let me share just something else with you. Something else to note is that another reason for the big reductions is that there were problems with the current maintenance plans, like they were typically written by the equipment manufacturer, and oftentimes the manufacturer doesn't know how often we use something or where we use something, right? So we always have to sanity check a manufacturer's recommendations. A lot of our maintenance was templated from similar equipment, maybe where it was used, same thing, was used in a different place or used less often or more often. And the process was static. Really, our maintenance schedules were out of date. What would happen is we would add to the maintenance over time, but we would never step back and say, hold on, are we doing more than we need to do? And the other thing is that a lot of the maintenance schedules at that time were developed when it was believed that more was better, and equipment ended up being over-maintained. And we talked about that yesterday. See, that's one of the reasons that gave rise to reliability-centered maintenance and why all of this research was done. In the early days in the commercial airline industry, they believed that things failed because they got old for the most part. So their maintenance schedules were packed with scheduled overhauls and scheduled replacements. And what they realized is that they were doing more harm than good because they were doing stuff they didn't need to do. Okay, let's see. And if I can just say something I'm super proud of, in 1999 we won the Logistics Team of the Year award, and in 2000 our team won the Department of Defense Value Engineering Award, and we were really excited about that one because that one was a really big deal. So anyway, and I say our team because another thing that we talked about yesterday is that when you do reliability-centered maintenance, the way to do it is with a facilitated working group approach, right? Because I've never seen any organization that has all of the historical data that they need to make meaningful decisions about physical assets. So whatever data you have, it's good to augment it with real world data. And that is the stuff that's in the minds of the equipment experts. So this whole RCM success story or case study, I certainly do not mean to stand here and say like, oh, this was all me, because I was just the facilitator. This was a huge team effort, right? From upper management, middle management, all the way to our RCM team, and then our working group members, the people in the fleet who participated. It was an incredible effort, and that's, like I said, is still going on. But the key to reliability, even if you're not doing RCM, but maybe you're doing another process, one of the keys is to involve the right people, right? The people who are in the field, they know the equipment, and they know the operating environment. It's absolutely essential. Okay, let me pause and look at the chat. Hector, you're welcome. I'm glad I could answer that question. Oh my gosh. Okay, check this out. 𝗪𝘠𝘪𝘶, I hope I'm saying your name right, is joining us from Iran. Wayne from Lincoln, UK, and Ibrahim from Libya. So welcome, everyone. Okay, so that's my thing about RCM. So happy birthday, RCM. And just to wrap up that, something I said yesterday is that usually when you have a birthday party, you get gifts. But really, the gift to us as reliability professionals, this report, right, this book, this philosophy, reliability-centered maintenance, it's a gift to all of us, and it's a gift that keeps on giving. I mean, this is the 42nd anniversary, and it's a timeless document, right? Because, you know, the fundamentals of reliability are the fundamentals. We're not going to get any new fundamentals. The fundamentals are exactly that, the fundamentals. And that's what RCM is packed with. RCM is packed with the basics of maintenance and reliability. Even if you learned about reliability-centered maintenance and you never did it, you would be a better reliability professional, because it's just jam-packed with the basics, with the foundations, many of the foundations that we need to take care of our equipment reliability. So the gift is ours. And we talked yesterday that this book was commissioned by the United States government, and that's why RCM is in the public domain. So you can just Google it. You can just Google Reliability-Centered Maintenance by Stanley Nolan and Howard Heap. Let me put that up here. Can you see? It's Nolan, there we go, Nowlan, and Howard Heap, HEAP. So you can just Google that, and it's online. You can just download your own copy. So there you are. But we have now talked about equipment reliability. And if you read any of my emails or you read any of the copy in my LinkedIn post, I said that I had something new that I wanted to share with you. And I'm working on something that I think that is very important for people. I know that it's been very important in my own life, and it is human reliability. Because, you know, machines are important, but people take care of machines. And it's important that we take care of ourselves. And it's also important to know that we're not just here for our professional stuff. You know, maybe there are some of us who have maybe some personal goals or some personal aspirations. And especially at this time of year, I think it's a really good time to talk about this stuff. But here's what I want to share. Okay, so just like machines, right? This is a little snippet of a failure modes and effects analysis, or an FMEA, for a compressor, right? So you see what's boxed in is the function of the compressor. And then you can see some of the failure modes or the failure causes. What would cause us not to get that function? In other words, what would cause us not to get that reliability that we need, right? Like our intake filter could get clogged, our drive shaft lubrication could dissipate, our ear valve controller could drift out of adjustment, etc., right? So as responsible custodians, we figure out what we want, and then we figure out what would cause us not to get it. But really, as human beings, we can do the same thing, right? Now, you can call it whatever you want, a goal, a mission, an objective. You can call it your heart's desire. It doesn't matter what you call it. Now, I know one of mine is to promulgate the principles of reliability-centered maintenance. That's one of my professional objectives, or I personally call it my mission. I feel that it is one of my missions in this lifetime is to just get as good as I can about RCM and share what I know, right? But the problem is that as human beings, we are also subject to failure modes. Now, I call these invisible obstacles, and they're invisible because we can't see them, but boy, do we feel them. But I first want to start out by talking about this. I heard about this concept. I was surfing the internet one day, and sometimes we learn or we get inspiration from the most unlikely places, and I happened upon a presentation by a Hindu priest, and his name was Brother Anandamoy. And something he said I just never forgot, and he talked about that in life there is duality. And as human beings, we have to deal with this duality, right? What I mean by that is there's positive and there's negative. There's health and illness. There is good and bad, right? So it's like we constantly have to be dealing with this duality. Now, we could step back and say, well, I wish there wasn't any duality, and why does there have to be evil, right? Why can't there just be good? Well, the way it was explained to me is because good cannot exist without evil, or negative cannot exist without positive. So, I don't know. If I can never rule the world, then maybe I'll change all this, but I don't rule in the world. I don't rule the world, I just live in it. So that means I just have to figure out how I'm going to respond to this, right? Now, part of that duality are these invisible obstacles, and there are 7 of them. At least seven that I have come into personal contact with, right? And they are fear, the voices. I don't know if you've ever experienced this. Maybe the voices that say, oh, don't go live today. Oh, you don't want to talk about that. Nobody wants to hear what you have to say. Nobody's going to tune in anyway. And if they do, they're going to make ugly comments that was awful. Why did you even waste your time doing it? Right? And we have these voices personally and professionally, right? I don't know, like maybe if you're married now, maybe you can think back about when you were first dating, when you go out on the first date and then, you're driving home and you're thinking, oh, why did I say that? Oh, why did I wear this? Oh, they must have thought I was awful, right? We get all this stuff comes at us. See, that's one of the invisible obstacles. It's part of that duality, right? And just like with machines, like we can't make it so that a filter, we can't stop a filter from clogging. We can only respond and manage the fact that we know it will clog if we take no action, right? We can't stop lubrication from dissipating. All we can do is just re-grease the bearing when we should. We can only manage it. It's the same way with this invisible stuff, right? We can't get rid of fear. I wish we could, but we can't totally get rid of the voices. We can only manage them, right? Then you've got stuff like overwhelm, comparison. I hate this one, comparison, right? Where you compare yourself to someone else personally, or even organizations like. And social media can be a real means to beat ourselves up, right? Like maybe you work in electric power and you read about an organization that's rocking it with their reliability and you think, well, why can't we rock it out over here, right? It's like that comparison thing is awful. You just have to do your best where you are, and comparing yourself to someone else or to a different organization, that's just certain disaster, right? Something else is, I call it the prison of perfection, where we don't start something because we're not ready for it to be exactly how we want it to be. That can really hold us back. Comfort is another one. It's like television, TV, Netflix, Amazon Prime Video. That can really seduce us. It's actually a form of seduction, in my opinion, right? You sit and you watch, and you've heard the term binge watch, right? It can really be a big time waster. You know, our job in this lifetime is not to be comfortable. It's to be uncomfortable. It's to be vulnerable and get ourselves out there to do what it is we know we need to do or that we want to do. And the last one that is, it's definitely not least, is our thoughts, right? And we've heard about, you may have heard about the power of positive thinking. Well, I don't know. I don't look at it that way. I don't look at it like this frou-frou way. I think of it more as scientifically, where, you know, thoughts are energy, and energy has a frequency and a vibration. So if all we're thinking about is how awful we are, or how awful the world is and all this negative stuff, well, it's like what comes at you, you know, you attract the same kind of thing. But the problem with all of this stuff is, number one, this is not our fault. And number two, if any of this resonates with you, none of this is your fault. And all of these things affect everybody, whether we want to admit it or not. So the only thing we can do is figure out how to manage it. But along the way, I've had a lot of incredible teachers. I've been very lucky. And I've learned some techniques how to manage all of these things, because every one of these things have held me back in my lifetime at one time or another. But I've figured out how to manage them, or in other words, how to crush them. Now, it's like a daily thing. You have to keep working at it. But I've figured it out. To a large degree, anyway. I guess we're always learning. I'm always learning. But I've got some good techniques that I have figured out, and something that I want to share with you. If any of this resonates with you, I've got something new that I'm working on now, and I'm almost ready to share it. If you would like to get some updates about this, about something that I'm going to come out with something soon, if you go to this URL, it is rcmtrainingonline.com/crush. If you go there and you sign up, I'll keep you posted on it. I hope that you will. I would love to be able to share more about this. But I just think, you know, especially at this time of year, this is one of my favorite times of the year, because it's almost like, you know, we can change ourselves at any moment in time, right? It doesn't matter if it's June, July, August, September, anytime we decide, any day, any hour, any second, any moment, we can switch gears. But there is something about this time of year that it's like we all get a do-over, right? It's the turn of the new year, and we get to wipe the slate clean. We get to dig up all of those things that we've got in our mind that we want to do. And this could be personally or professionally. Maybe there's something new you want to implement at work with respect to reliability, right? But maybe the voices are coming at you. Don't say that in that meeting. Oh, Bob tried that last year. Don't bring that up. Everyone's just going to shoot it down anyway. They're going to think it's a waste of time, right? If you've got any of this kind of coming at you, any one or any more of these, then I hope that you will sign up, because we can manage all of this junk. And this is the perfect time to do it. It's the perfect time of year to do it, to kind of maybe even, you know, recommit to ourselves that we're going to start working hard on it. Okay, so that's that. Let me look in the chat really quickly. Francis wants to know, how has RCM fared in the electric power distribution? Any practical use cases? Okay, Francis, I personally have not done any RCM analyses in that industry, but I I do know of, I don't know them really well, but I know people who have done RCM in that industry. And so I do know that RCM has been successfully applied there. And the other reason why I love this question is that just know that reliability-centered maintenance can be done on anything. It was originally done in the commercial airline industry, and I showed this yesterday. Let me find this blurb. When Nolan and Heap wrote their book, they specifically made a point to tell the world that one of the reasons that they were writing this book was so that that reliability-centered maintenance could be used more widely and that it was applicable in any industry. So hold on, I'm trying to find where that, here it is. So in Nolan and Heap's report, I'm going to stop sharing for a second so you can see this. I'm going to hold it up. In Nolan and Heap's report, let me get it straight. Okay, it's right here. I got to turn to read it though. They said that, I'll show this to you in another second. I'll put it up to the camera. It says, the RCM technique can be learned more quickly and is more readily applicable to complex equipment other than transport aircraft. So one of the reasons why, let me get this up there. Hold on, here we go. One of the reasons why Nolan and Heap wrote their report is because they wanted RCM principles to be used more widely, right? And something we said yesterday is that, you know, it was born in the commercial airline industry, but what do we find on aircraft? Electronics, hydraulics, pneumatics, structure, engines, right? I mean, go to any plant, any organization, anywhere in the world. If it's a machine, you're probably going to find electronics, hydraulics, pneumatics, engines, right? Any one or more of those types of systems. The only difference with aircraft is the consequences of failure, right? An aircraft can crash and people can die. So maybe there's a particular failure mode in a manufacturing environment where people wouldn't die, but it could be very costly, right? But the equipment is the same. We've got filters and seals and lines and lubrication, etc. So RCM can be applied to anything. Okay, Sanjay says, hello from Saudi Arabia. Wow, that's incredible. Hello, Sanjay. Thank you for joining us. Okay, Shanawaj asks, how can we improve our mindset? Okay, the number one way, Shanawaj, I'm going to share my screen again. I feel so passionate about this. I hope that you will opt in just so that I can share updates, because I have something really cool coming, something really good coming. The number one way to change the mindset is to, number one, be aware of these 7 invisible obstacles and know that you are not out of your mind. Like, I'm the only one who hears these voices, right? You know, or all this stuff like, I'm so awful, I'm so terrible. And then sometimes we want to start something new, but we get so overwhelmed, we don't know where to begin, so we don't do anything. Or we're comparing ourselves. Well, if John can do that, well then, you know, why can't I? There's something, here's the way I think about it. You know, when you look in the mirror, I mean, I'll just speak like as a woman, you know, a woman looks in the mirror and, you know, we kind of look at ourselves, our hair, our face, right? Our physique. And it's very easy for us as women to compare ourselves to other women, maybe of the same age or, you know, same body type, and think, well, why can't I look that way? But here's the thing. If we think like just from a divine perspective, which for me personally, I believe there's something else out there, right? And so if you believe that way, right, then you have to look at it like this, that you are very unique, right? There's only one of you. There's only one of me. So it's kind of like snubbing the universe to be comparing ourselves to someone else, because we're unique and we have our own unique stuff going on, right? I have skills and abilities and ideas that no one else has. You have skills and abilities and ideas that have been planted in your mind that nobody else has. So that's why it's wicked. I use the word wicked. I'm from Boston originally, and we use that word wicked, but it's actually wicked to compare ourselves to somebody else. And that goes for professional reasons as well, right? To compare our organization to another organization. Because if you're looking as an outsider looking into another organization and thinking, wow, they really got it going on with reliability, well, maybe they do. But I'm here to tell you, I promise you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, there is no perfect organization out there, right? Every organization has their problems, just like every family has their own problems. No family is perfect, no person is perfect, but something that I'm going to share in what I'm going to publish with all of this, a very big lesson that I learned about perfection is that we're not here to be perfect, but we're here to be perfectly imperfect, right? So we're imperfect people, we're living in an imperfect world, so just do it imperfectly. So that's the number one way, is to realize, acknowledge that these issues exist, that all of these things are real, but we can learn to manage them. But it's like they're bullies. All of these things, it's just like bullies. You know, when you're in school and, you know, if there's a bully about, what can you do to a bully to really stop him dead in his tracks? The one thing you can do is to stand up to him and call him out for what he is. And that's what these things are. They're bullies. I'm going to write that down. All of these invisible obstacles, they're bullies. They try to keep us small. They try to keep us from our dreams, from our goals, from our mission, our purpose, our objective, whatever you want to call it. That's their job. Now you might ask why? Why does it have to be this way? Well, that's because of duality, right? Because you can't have positive without negative, and you can't have health without illness. It's just the way it is. Don't waste your time trying to figure out why this is, or trying to change this, or complaining about duality, because it just is. You can complain all day long, but it's not going to change. But we can confront these bullies, and we can learn how to manage them, and we can overcome them, and we can win. And that means then that we are free to pursue what it is that we want to do, both personally and professionally. Okay, let me look at the chat real quickly. How do you address culture so that the systems can be addressed strategically? Okay, Gavin, I got something else that I'm working on. If we switch from the mindset role back to the technical role, you know, one of the things we hear a lot about is culture. Now, I will tell you that in my experience, one of the reasons why, if you're in an organization, or you know of an organization where the culture is not what it needs to be, the number one reason is because all of the people who need to understand reliability don't really understand it, right? So we need to make sure that the people involved in taking care of our equipment, because if you're a reliability engineer, right, or you're the lead when it comes to reliability, well, that's great if you know all about reliability. But if the rest of your team, right, because we all know, we've heard it a million times, who's responsible for reliability? Everyone. But if everyone is responsible for reliability, then everyone needs to understand what that even is. Right? And that's one of the things, that's another reason why I love reliability-centered maintenance, is because if you understand this process and the principles embodied in it, then to a very large degree you understand what reliability is, right? Like one of the questions was, what about random failure? Can we manage it? Yes, we can. We may be able to manage it with predictive maintenance. Right? That's one of the principles that's embodied in this process. Even if you never did RCM, just applying some of the principles embodied in the process could help. So the number one thing with culture is you've got to learn how to teach people what reliability is. And so I have something up my sleeve about that too for 2020. I've just made the decision that I'm going to crush all these invisible obstacles, and I'm finally going to move forward with, I've got two big plans. One for crush the obstacles so that we can learn to bring our own goals alive. And the other is about how do we teach people about reliability? Because, I hear a lot of times that people can't get the money they need for RCM or any other improvement efforts, or management thinks that maintenance is a cost center and not a profit center. Well, that's because they don't really, well, I guess I can't speak for everyone, but I'll speak in my experience. That is very likely, it may be because they don't understand it, right? Anything we don't understand, we just say, oh, well, we don't need to do that, or I don't want that. Maybe we really do need it, but we don't go for it because we don't understand it. So the number one thing with culture is people have to understand what reliability is and what it takes to get it. Okay, let me see. A LinkedIn user says, Francis, check out the link to 𝗟𝗶𝘃𝗲. They have a ton of information on, yes, I am aware that 𝗟𝗶𝘃𝗲 has done a lot of RCM. Okay, another LinkedIn user says, nice approach to human reliability, Nancy. A quick message from Brazil. Thank you, whoever made that message. 𝗧𝘢𝘯𝘠, can it then change our values and belief system? Absolutely, 𝗧𝘢𝘯𝘠. I mean, what if one of the, see, here's the thing, especially with fear, right? Oh, I'm afraid to do that because, I mean, all fear is real. But not all fear is valid, right? And there's a big difference between real and valid. So what if one of your belief systems is, hey, if I go for this and I pitch this at work, you can really get down into a big, it's almost like a funnel, right? It's like you throw your thought in here, and all of a sudden, whoosh, you start swirling around in like this tornado. Well, if I pitch it, they're going to think I'm an idiot. And then maybe they'll think that I've already started to do it. And then maybe they'll start looking into what I'm doing every day. And then maybe they'll misunderstand what it is I'm doing. Then maybe I'm going to get fired, or maybe then I'm going to get ostracized at work. I mean, it's like we as human beings get into all this junk. So yes, absolutely, 𝗧𝘢𝘯𝘠, it can change our values and it can change our belief system. And that's one of the things we need to be doing constantly as human beings, both personally and professionally. Let me sanity check what I believe or what I understand about reliability. Let me sanity check this thing. What is reliability-centered maintenance all about? The other thing is, let me sanity check this fear over here. I know it's real because it keeps me up at night, but is it valid, right? And it's those kinds of things that I'm going to talk about and crush the obstacles. Okay, what are essential elements on which success of RCM implementation depends? Okay, Vosev, the number one thing, if you're going to do RCM, do it right. If you're going to do RCM, do it right. Don't fall prey to these shortened versions, or a version where someone says, oh, this will take you half the time and you'll get all the results. Well, we all live in the real world, right? You receive proportional to what you put in, right? Now, there are shortened versions of RCM on the market, and some of those have merit, right? So if you do them, as long as you acknowledge that you may not get all of the same benefits as if you did full-blown RCM, then go for it. But number one, do RCM right. Number two, make sure your people are trained. So that goes hand in hand with something else. So 3 things. The other thing is, make sure you do RCM with the right people. RCM is not something that should be done by one person. One RCM engineer, one reliability engineer. It's too one-sided. There's only one perspective there. We need operators, we need maintainers, we need logisticians. It depends on the equipment, who you have on your team, but it is a team effort. And if you do it with a team, they have to be trained in RCM. Now, I'm not talking about a month-long training course, right? I'm talking like, a 2-day introductory RCM training course, just so they can understand the process and they understand the ideas and the philosophy. so that they can apply it correctly with you. Okay, what's the role of CBM and RCM? Golem Riza, excellent question. CBM is part of reliability-centered maintenance. It's step 6 in the RCM process. Step 6 is when we identify what proactive maintenance we should be doing. And part of that is the consideration of condition-based maintenance. If you're doing RCM, you are already considering condition-based maintenance. It's like one-stop shopping. Okay, major difference between RCM2 and RCM3. Okay, Vijaya, I was an RCM2 practitioner when I first started. I was an Aladon licensee. I am no longer an Aladon licensee, so I understand that now there is RCM3. That's something that you could contact Aladon about to understand the difference between RCM2 and RCM3. But I do know from being an RCM2 practitioner that that those RCM processes, they are based upon true reliability-centered maintenance. You know, those are not shortened versions. They do RCM right. Okay, what is the recommended approach for integrating RCM with asset management systems? Okay, so Aswan, really, reliability-centered maintenance is going to produce results for you. It's going to produce some proactive maintenance, and it's going to produce some other default strategies. So how that interfaces with the rest of your asset management system, that's a really big question. Just know that reliability-centered maintenance is going to produce a product. And then, you can do great RCM analyses all day long, but you have to implement the results properly. So if you don't implement, you might as well have not even done it. So how you interface with your other asset management systems, that would really be up to you to investigate. Okay, Gavin asks, how valuable has peer-to-peer support and evaluation been in your RCM processes? Okay, Gavin, maybe you can get a little more specific with your question. I'm not sure what you mean, but if you mean like peers doing RCM together, like operators and maintainers, I would say invaluable. You cannot put a price tag on that kind of collaboration, because not only does it then produce the most valid RCM results, but imagine, I've seen it. I've seen it in my working groups. Can you imagine for a moment what that kind of collaboration does for your reliability culture? For many different reasons. Number one is the organization cares enough to spend the time and the money and make the commitment to allow all of those people to get together at the same time to make decisions together. That is just invaluable and priceless. So it does so much for the culture of reliability, because everyone starts to work together. And I'm not just talking like pie in the sky stuff. I've seen it. I've seen it where you've got an operator and a design engineer working together. And the design engineer will be writing a failure effect in the design. This is actually a true story. The design engineer will say, okay, well, this is what happens, and I type it up, and then the operator says, that's not what happens. And the design engineer says, yeah, that is what happens, because that's what I designed it to do. And I'll never forget this day. The operator sat back and said, I don't know what you designed it to do, but I'm just telling you that is not what happens. And the more we investigated, it was obviously proven that the operator was right. So the engineer learned something, right? So the engineer learns, there's collaboration together. They start working together. They start respecting each other more. What's even more important is they start understanding each other's perspectives, right? A lot of times, not necessarily an argument, but a misunderstanding. A lot of times that happens just because of different perspectives, because one party didn't understand the other party's perspective. So there's just so much that can come out of this collaboration. Okay, Aswan says, would you please discuss and clarify the GABs in the operation and maintenance manuals of the equipment and how it will affect on implementing efficient RCM? Okay, Aswan, I'm not exactly sure I understand your question. What I will just say is this. When it comes to operations and maintenance manuals, I've actually facilitated an analysis on a tech manual because it was that bad. So that's possible, right? But put that aside for a moment. When you do reliability-centered maintenance the right way with the right people, if there are some glaring errors in a tech manual, it will likely come up just as part of the normal facilitation of the process. And sometimes if a tech manual is wrong, right? Let's say it says to install the pot like this, but it should be installed like this. That can be a cause of chronic failure. It doesn't necessarily have to be maintenance related. So in that way, big problems in specific problems in tech manuals or operating procedures, a lot of times those come to light. They're elevated, right, as part of an RCM analysis. Okay, let's see. 𝗧𝘂𝗃𝗃𝗃 wants to know, is there any advantage of having integrated RCM part of core ERP system over the separate RCM systems? I don't really understand that question. Maybe you can clarify. Integrated RCM part of core ERP system as opposed to separate RCM systems. I think I might understand it. I'm not sure. But the number one thing I want to make clear is that RCM is not a software program. So I would rather you more focus on getting a couple of pilot projects done the right way so you can see the results. And then how you implement those results, it's very important, obviously. But the number one thing is to do RCM correctly and with the right people. So I'm sorry if that didn't answer the question, 𝗧𝘂𝗃𝗃, but I'm not sure I understand the question. Okay, so wow, we covered a lot today. Like I mentioned, I'm really jazzed about this Crush the Obstacles because I think it's high time we kick these invisible obstacles to the curb, where we acknowledge them for what they are and get them out of our way so we can do what we want to do personally and professionally. So do please sign up and I will keep you posted. I've got some good stuff coming out soon. Okay, 𝗧𝘂𝗃 says, for static equipment, is RCM relevant? RCM is relevant for any type of equipment on the planet. You can do it on anything. The one caveat is that I'm not suggesting you do it on everything. In fact, I told you RCM is my thing. It's the technical love of my life, but I still don't think that you should do it on everything because you don't need to do RCM on everything. Pick what you need to do RCM on. Start with the stuff that's causing you the most pain, costing you the most money, is maybe the most critical equipment. Just start there, right? We live in the real world. I tell this to my husband all the time. He'll come home and say something, and I'll say, well, when we move to Fantasyland, then, you can fix that. But right now we live in the real world, and there's none of us who has enough time or resources to do full-blown RCM on everything. So focus on what you can do. Thank you, Gavin. Okay. All right, Aswan, as you know, the O&M manual does not provide the failure mode pattern of each element in the equipment. No, it does not, Aswan, and no, it does not. And if you do have a manual that does provide failure modes, a lot of times they're actually not even failure modes, they're failure effects, right? Like bearing seizes, component fails. That's the failure effect. We need to know what specifically causes the bearing to seize, right? It could be lubrication dissipates. It could be that it was over lubricated. It could be that the wrong lubrication was used, right? It could mean that it was lubricated improperly. All of those 4 different failure causes have different ways that we would manage each one. That's why we need to figure out what those failure modes are. And so another thought about reliability-centered maintenance is make sure if you don't know RCM, do it with someone who knows. I'm not saying that because I'm an RCM expert, but it's just like anything in life. If you try to do it when you don't really understand it, you might end up with a big mess, and you might waste time and resources that you don't have to waste. Okay, so I don't see any other questions or comments, so I think that we'll leave it there for today. I am sincerely thankful that all of you joined me. I loved this discussion, and I will be back again, and I'm super excited about Crush, so do sign up if any of that resonated with you. And yeah, I'll definitely be back live again. Thank you everyone for the time. And just one last time, happy birthday, Reliability Centered Maintenance. Thank you for this incredible philosophy that is as relevant today as it was in 1978. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.